everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about a magazine that I've been reading recently, it's the new Philosopher magazine I'm going to be talking to you about, and my thoughts on its contents. I've taken some notes on it, so I will be looking down, from my notebook. Isn't that pretty? I love this notebook. I got this one from For Work, it's a discount store, and they always sell really beautiful notebooks that always look lovely on the outside, so I just thought I'd show you it. So I'll be looking down a bit. Just bear with me, I just need to go and pick it up. I bear with me. Here it is. This is a magazine I've been reading lately. The new Philosopher magazine. Let me know, have any of you read this magazine? I don't often buy book magazines, or I tend to read more books, but lately I thought I'd treat myself, because I often go looking in newsagents for magazines. I just thought, why not? I'll try it out, and it's actually a really good read, so I think I'll get that one again. I did once before read Philosophy Now, but for some reason I think they stopped selling that one. Anyway, so in this edition, it was talking all about play. And one article I particularly enjoyed is called The Promise of Play by Oliver Burkeman. Like myself, he says he is someone who strives to be productive, is very driven, and is happiest when absorbed in something constructive. In my case, I have to read books and constantly stimulate my mind in order to feel meaning and that I am alive. Just being, for example, stepping back from goal-focused tasks to look at a sunset or go for a walk can seem like an ordeal when this mindset takes over. This mode of living life is called instrumental, meaning that every moment is seen as a means to some future end, instead of being enjoyed purely for its own sake. The philosopher Kieran Setia, I might not be pronouncing his name right, Setia, don't know if any of you have heard of him. I hadn't heard of him before. I first heard of him in this magazine. It gives me lots of, magazine often gives me lots of food for thought, really. So the philosopher Kieran Setia, who I would like to research further, has argued that telic, or goal-based activities, are lacking something fundamental, because they take our focus away from the real pleasure of just existing in the here and now. This perspective is articulated in his recent book called Mid-Life, a philosophical guide, which I would like to read, and I've put it onto my reading list. He argues that our whole lives are dominated by the so-called ethos of productivity, but the future that we chase is an illusion that never arrives. It's a bit like sort of waiting for Godot, it never arrives, and we end up missing out on actual living. Berkman argues in this article, The Promise of Play, that play and leisure can help us stay in the moment, because by definition they are not goal-driven activities. However, even activities that have some future goal in mind, such as cleaning, can be intrinsically enjoyed in and of themselves, without needing to be seen as a boring chore. And it's interesting, psychologically, that once we designate a chore as work, we learn to hate it, because work has an element of compulsion, whereas play is seen as fun. And indeed, in my research on the internet recently about play, so I thought this topic was very fascinating, I came across this developmental psychologist. You might have heard of him, I think he's American, called Peter... My mind's gone. What is his name? Peter Gray, that's it. He's a developmental psychologist who is very against compulsory formalised education of the sort that most people experience in the Western world today. Because he argues that children are inherently predisposed to learn. We are born with this inbuilt mechanism for self-taught learning, which comes about via play, which is really interesting, I thought, because when I was at school, sadly, I feel I hardly learned anything when I was at school. Maybe the only thing I really learned at school was possibly the very basics, like how to spell, how to write, although even that's a bit debatable because I learned more via my own study, really. But anything, what past the rudimentaries, the basic ABCs, I don't think I really learned anything at school. Now, Ian Bogost wrote a book called Play Anything, which I would also like to read. In his book, he argues that play can enrich real-life activities if we treat reality like the rules of a game, so that the world becomes a playground. In this way, productivity itself can, at least in theory, become pleasurable. And arguably it is a false binary, if you like, to locate work as something that is opposite to play. And I think maybe that's where we come into all sorts of trouble with that mindset. I would certainly like to become less serious about life because it is very hard for me to relax and let go. I'm chronically tense. I'm a very tense person. Another book that the magazine refers to is The Grasshopper, Games, Life and Utopia by the Canadian philosopher Bernard Suits, also now on my reading list. I'll put the links to all of these books in the comment box below as well, so you can check them out too if you're interested. This book argues that in a perfect world, we would spend most of our time playing. We would only do things that had atelic or intrinsic value, meaning that we would pursue them for their own sake and not for the sake of some future goal. Now, interestingly, when we think about play, we're often quite narrow in our perception of play. But Stuart Brown, in his book Play, which I'd also like to read, argues that play is actually like oxygen. It's all around us, but we take it so much for granted that we almost don't notice that it's there until it's missing. He argues that play is therefore rather unappreciated, but that art, books, music, all of these activities actually come under play, under the umbrella of play. We might not think of them in those terms, but they are. They come under the umbrella of play because we do them in and of themselves just for the pure pleasure of doing the activity. So maybe, I do engage with play. That's what philosophers do, really. They play with ideas. That's a form of play. Reading itself can be seen as a form of play. So maybe I play more than I think I do. Because, these are all activities that we pursue for their own sake and not for the sake of some future goal. But the question is, would a utopia where all we do is play, would that leave us dissatisfied? That's the question. After all, the psychologist Viktor Frankl argued that as humans, we need some tension or conflict in our lives that is generated by the gap between what we have achieved and what is possible in the future, and that this is how we derive meaning, through the formation of a narrative that connects the past, present, and future. So maybe what is most important is striking a balance between telic and atelic activities, or, even better, infusing telic activities with an atelic attitude, so that even though we have the future in mind, we are still 100% enjoying the activity for its own sake. I think that I attain this fusion when I'm reading a very interesting book or preparing a lovely meal. On one level, I am thinking about future goals because I want to tick the book off my list. I want to learn something. So there is an element of goal-focused activity or telic activity there. But at the same time, particularly if it's a really interesting book, I am also getting a lot of in-the-moment pleasure from reading that book. In the article Play Like a Child, in this magazine here, The New Philosopher, these are all contained in this magazine, by Ed Smith, it is argued that play involves a suspension of self-consciousness. When we commentate on our actions by criticising, judging, and assessing our performance, we are more likely to face the so-called yips. I love that word, yips. which refers to a paralysis of movement, a bit like what Jacob Horner experienced in The End of a Road in my last video. We find it hard to make decisions, and everything we do feels forced and unnatural, which is a state I'm all too familiar with when I am trying to mask my authentic self. I think I do experience the yips a lot, and this, this stifles my free expression, and I'm trying to be more authentic, but it is really difficult. The article argues that play is a cure for this self-consciousness, and the attitude of play could even help delay the aging process, both mentally and physically. Another article that resonated with me is called What's in a Game by Nigel Warburton. This article refers to Wittgenstein's notion of family resemblance terms in relation to play. Now, Wittgenstein, the philosopher, was against essentialism, or the idea that words always refer to definite objects. For example, the word game is nebulous or ill-defined, as it can mean a multitude of different things depending on the context. All that games have in common, argued Wittgenstein, is a network of overlapping similarities. A game, therefore, does not have a single essence, because no one thing is common to all games. In a like manner, family members do not all share one fixed trait, but are similar to each other because they share a variety of different traits that are spread out across the family, each trait being manifested by some members but not by others, who might share a different trait. No one particular feature will be shared by all members, yet they all still resemble each other by displaying a range of family traits. Wittgenstein argued that this explains how some words that lack a fixed essence can still have a consistent meaning that enables effective communication to take place. This led me to wonder, going off a bit on a tangent now, away from play, back to autism, but this led me to wonder whether autism could be seen as a family resemblance term, and this might explain why we can struggle to pin autism down by locating a fixed essence, yet most people can still meaningfully talk about the condition. Autistic people share traits, yet autism lacks a fixed definition because no one trait on its own is necessarily shared by all autistic people. What do you think about this idea? This is just, if you like, a sort of stream of consciousness idea, I guess, that came to me while I was reading this, and I thought, this could apply to autism. I wonder if anyone else has come to that conclusion. A related notion that I picked up from this magazine is that of intransitivity. I love that word. It makes me go happy. Yes. Intransitivity. So certain words do make me feel very, very excited. I don't know what it is about the word intransitivity. I just like that word. Maybe it's something to do with the way it sounds, the way it looks. I'm talking about synesthesia later, but it's just a nice word. I like it. Now, in logic, because I went away and did some research on this word, in logic, to be transitive, some quality that applies between successive members of a sequence must also apply between any two members. So, if A is larger than B is larger than C, then it would follow that A is larger than C. But if the sequence was intransitive, then A might be, for sake of argument, if applied to autism, milder than B milder than C. But it does not follow. It does not follow through. Trans meaning through. It does not follow that A is milder than C, because each person does not share the same features, or the features are multidimensional. Which means that autism is not commensurable. It cannot be measured by the same metric or barometer. There is no sliding scale that runs from mild to severe. So what do you think? By the way, I came across this term intransitivity in connection to sport, where it's argued that you can't really compare different players because each player each player, if you like, exhibits different features that aren't commensurable. And I was thinking that this sort of intransitivity could also be applied to autism. So let me know what you think about that. That's just another kind of if you like, association I formed in my mind as I was reading, connecting this idea to autism. So I very much, as I say, I very much enjoyed reading this magazine, and I do intend to buy it again in future. Do let me know what magazines you enjoy. I'd be interested to know if you read any magazines similar to this one. And you know, it argues, you know, the argument that you know, play matters essentially, and we should just be more like, you know, like this. Yeah, sort of just let it all out. So I thought that was really cool. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you.